My name's Katy German. I'm the Executive Director of the Country Dance and Song Society, which is what CDSS stands for. I'm joined tonight by our Director of Programs, Joanna Reiner Wilkinson, our Membership Coordinator, Audrey Jaber, our brand new Director of Development, Charmaine Slavin, and our fabulous consultant for this project, Lindsey Dono. All right. So a few things before we get going. I want to give a little bit of context for this survey because it has come up a lot. Let's see. We have over the past 10 years, CDSS has conducted many surveys of organizers, of affiliates, of our members, and we've gotten a lot of really great feedback and data. But we were very aware that the vast majority of respondents were definitely above age 45 and really much higher. And that's not a problem in of itself. It's great. We have great relationships with a lot of people who've made a huge difference across the community. And we value that very much. But we were looking at this clear gap in our data. We weren't hearing from or engaging with people under the age of 45, despite knowing that many folks in that age range were very involved in the traditions that we are stewarding, stepping up into leadership roles, all sorts of things. So we also saw in our own membership numbers the average age going up, and understanding that, for us, for CDSS, membership is one of the main kind of proxy measures for how we're engaging with people, and it has been for many decades at least. So we wanted to really dive a little bit deeper into why we weren't able to build the relationships that we've had with older generations or older folks with the younger crowd. At the same time, we've gotten a lot of requests over the past, well, I've been here 6 years and it's probably been more than that, where our affiliates and local organizers are asking us what they can do to bring in more young adults and younger people. And we have anecdotal answers to that. We can talk about some things that worked here, some things that worked there, but we didn't really have a solid foundation for providing kind of any broader recommendations or have a solid footing to stand on. So that's kind of the scenario that we were in 2022, 2023, and we really, for 2023, decided, okay, we really want to carve out time and do a deeper dive and figure out what we can do to engage and learn from and work with this cohort. So we did it. Our next slide. I'm so sorry, I lost there we go. Audrey, can you cue slides forward?
Sure thing.
Oh, I skipped this part. Ugh. We're so professional here. Sorry, I'm so excited about the survey. So yeah, we're just for FYI, this Zoom session is being recorded, and please be aware of that if you want to participate. If you have questions about the survey that you want us to consider at the end of the presentation during the discussion time, please send a direct message to me, Katy German, in the Zoom chat. All right. And so overall, I started talking about the problem statement already. So we're already ahead of agenda. You're welcome. We're going to hear about survey methodology, key findings and recommendations, and then we're going to do our best to hold some time for Q&A and answer questions that either were submitted ahead of time or that you have after the presentation. All right. So now there's the slide that talked about what I already talked about. We felt like we had a gap in our data. We knew clearly that there were a lot of folks in this age range out there doing great things. It's important to us as an organization, and it's important to our larger community for us to all be learning from each other and understanding the needs of various cohorts, groups, cross sections. So that was really the motivation for conducting this survey this past fall. Next slide. So our two main goals were to, one, understand the gap, but also we wanted to explore specifically, what are the specific needs of this age group? We've heard a lot of feedback from older members and friends saying their deep concern about the longevity of these things that they've built, really wanting to work more closely with new leaders and upcoming leaders. And so we kind of knew the needs from that perspective, but we wanted to dive deeper and understand the needs of coming from the other perspective. And one thing that we want to say up front is that there are certain things that we cannot extrapolate from this data. This is not a comprehensive survey of all things we could possibly have asked anyone in this age group. We had to keep it kind of focused. So please know, this is not a complete census of 18 to 44-year-olds at all. It is the data that we're looking at represents the people who responded to the survey. And I think we'll talk about that more as we look at the data. And we also didn't want to make this a pitch for membership to respondents. We thought, well, hey, this is our chance. Let's drive up our membership numbers. But really, from our conversations and based on feedback from people that we consulted, we decided that's really not the angle we wanted to take. And membership is great for CDSS, but the most important thing is building relationships and engagement and figuring out how to network and work together. And so that's why we did that. Audrey, anything you want to add?
Nope, that sounds great. I mean, this kind of came about because we have been doing annual membership surveys and kind of realizing and looking at the data that the membership did skew older. And so this was kind of, again, a way of filling the CDSS's knowledge gap in order to create the full picture of our folk community. And so we're just really excited to be sharing this data with you guys tonight. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and take it from here and and turn it over to Lindsey Dono, who I think is the best person to be able to kind of describe the methodology first off and foremost about how we created this survey. And so Lindsey Dono is a research scientist and dance caller from Tacoma, Washington, and a dear friend, and would like to introduce her to continue on.
All right, next slide, Audrey, thanks. So here's what we did, is we built a 10-minute online survey that we created through Google Forms. And we tried to create something that was short, painless, and really well tested so that we really felt like we were talking to the people who would be responding about the language that resonated with them. And we were really trying to target people within communities that fell within the CDSS scope. So participants in contra dance, English country dance, Morrison sword dance, square dance, and the music supporting these traditions. This survey was distributed in October of last year. It was out in the field for 4 weeks, and we socialized it through a number of avenues, including the CSS email list, social media pages, printed flyers at events. You can see we even had a QR code for it, and really by snowball sampling, word of mouth distribution. And thank you so much to everyone who really helped get the word out. We had an amazing response rate, 829 complete responses. Next slide. So overall, we asked questions on a couple different topics. We started with trying to understand respondents' participation in folk activities. We asked optional questions about demographics. Who are they? Where are they? We asked them how they were engaging with CSS, and then we split the survey. Those who reported being members answered one set of questions. Those who reported not being members answered a different set of questions. And then everyone answered an open-ended question at the end: what can CDSS do? Next slide. So as Katy started talking about, we can't do everything in a 10-minute survey. And this was not the goal of this was not to be a completely representative cross sample of everyone in this age bracket in the folk community. What we do know is that there are some biases that we want to keep in mind as we analyze this data. And we do know that the responses were skewed towards those who have some connection with CDSS or its affiliates online. As we were looking at the data coming in, we tried to identify gaps and, target our outreach such that we could try to close those. But we do know that we probably underrepresented people in rural communities, and we also probably underrepresented the particular age range of 18 to 24. Something else that became immediately apparent is that those who were above that 44 age cutoff um, expressed the very reasonable sentiment that their views were not being heard. And this is something that CDSS took really seriously and provided an opportunity to also leave feedback that was considered in analyzing this and is looking at additional avenues to engage. Next slide. So without further ado, let's look at the data. Next slide. Quick numbers to get us warmed up. Who were these 829 respondents? 21% of them were parents of children under the age of 18. 15% of them were students. 13% identified as a person with disabilities. 5% as Black, Indigenous, or a person of color. 22% identified as COVID cautious or immunocompromised. 45% identified as queer or trans. And a quick note about how we asked these questions, they were optional multi-select, which meant, and we did not provide long explanations for what any of these things are. People could choose to self-identify as one of these, or they could choose to not answer the question. Overall, we found that the vast majority of participants did optionally answer these questions. We have gotten some questions already about that 45% queer trans number. And this is where I can provide a little bit more color. In our conversations with our pilot testers, particularly in the 18 to 24 range, we really checked in about what is the language that would resonate here? And the word queer really stood out. And queer is defined for this group really as anyone who is not heterosexual or cisgendered. And so this ended up being a catch-all bucket that a lot of people identified as. And if you look at general population data, like an Axios survey, we found that 20 to 30% of 18 to 27-year-olds at the national level do identify this way. So this number is something that is higher than general population, but not outrageous, and something that we want to keep in mind as we're moving through the data. Next slide. So overall, contra dance was the most common way that these respondents participated in folk activities, with almost 90% reporting involvement. The next most common were English country dance and community singing. Outside of CDSS's scope, we found that respondents were dancing fusion, East and West Coast swing, Val folk and Scottish, and participating in jam sessions. Next slide. We also found that the way that these respondents were engaging was mostly in their reoccurring, presumably local events, rather than a once a year festival. And this is something that we do want to keep in mind later as we go through some of the asks. Next slide. We found that respondents came from all across the US. The two regions that had the greatest representation in the survey were the West and the Northeast. Something that I do want to call out is that 10% of respondents did not identify as having a home community or said that somehow that it was a complicated situation. And these individuals either may not have been near a folk community and had to travel, or that the community they really felt was their home community or where they were most comfortable was not where they currently lived. Next slide. Another way that we looked at demographics was in terms of folk community hubs. Now, this visual of the heat map is something that Jeff Kaufman created. And what it is it's a list of, or it's a representation of contra events, both regular and festival events that are weighted approximately by the annual hours of dancing. So that is not our data. What is our data is the overlay on top of that of which hubs really had a lot of representation from the survey. And overall, we found that the respondents in the survey mapped to where there was contra dance event density. One exception is Asheville. So we think that we have underrepresented respondents from that area. Next slide. Something else that was particularly interesting to CDSS about this survey and finding out like what are youth leaders up to? And we identified leader as someone who is a musician, a caller, a sound engineer, an organizer, etc. And it seemed as though there were a number of individuals who were in leadership roles that were either not engaging with CDSS or had a different relationship with CDSS. And it was particularly interesting to ensure that the voices of leaders were being represented. And remarkably, 51% of respondents met what we considered a definition of leader. Of these individuals, or overall, we found that a quarter of them actually earned income from participating or from leading folk activities. The majority of them relied on other sources of income primarily. However, a small proportion of them, 6% of all the respondents, were either fully or mostly reliant on the income from leading folk activities. Next slide. And now that you know who these respondents are, I'll turn it back to Audrey, who's going to talk about how these respondents are engaging with CDSS.
Thank you so much, Lindsey, for all of that. And that also reminds me that I first off want to start by thanking the respondents who took this survey. Without them taking the time out of their daily lives to take the survey, this wouldn't have been possible. And so I just feel extremely grateful for the 829 responses that we had that we were able to use. So thank you for that. All right. Membership status. Turns out the large majority were not members of CDSS and membership was not on their radar. So we asked, are you a member of CDSS? And 80% of respondents were not CDSS members. For 55% of the respondents, membership was not even something they had considered. And so this is, anyways, this is a pretty bold statement, and I think the numbers here speak for themselves. CDSS engagement without membership was common, but some were unsure if CDSS was actually involved. So 2/3 reported participating in communities or events that they believed were affiliated with CDSS. However, 28% were unsure if their communities or events had CDSS connection. I do want to mention that, this is a self-defined affiliate, so we can't say one way or another if these communities are in fact related to us or in reality affiliated with CDSS, but this tells us that they believe that their communities are affiliated with CDSS.
Audrey, I'm so sorry to jump in. We're getting reports that people are having trouble hearing you.
Oh.
I'm not experiencing that, so I can't speak to what this issue is, but if you could get your mic closer, that might help.
Yeah, I'll just turn up the volume of my microphone. All right. All right. Is that better? Joe, can you hear me better? Okay, I will continue and monitor and let me know if there's more people. Okay.
Great, thanks.
All right, cool. All right. Regardless of membership status, many respondents were unaware of what CDSS does. So members reported higher knowledge of CDSS programming, which I think is a fair statement, unsurprisingly. But there were very few CDSS experts, and I love that wording. Again, us trying to use that natural language. So only 8% of all members claimed to be CDSS experts, and I hope that those are, I hope all the staff who took the survey selected themselves as experts. And 26% of these respondents claimed to literally know nothing about CDSS. All right. I'm going to turn up my microphone just a little bit more. Okay. All right. Many of the CDSS members not in it for the benefits. So these are, this was the question stated for the folks who did say that they were members. And of those, the membership was motivated by supporting CDSS work and the folk community pride. So the large majority of these members believed in supporting an organization work that's important to them. And only 28% were motivated by the CDSS membership benefits. The non-members. So why aren't you a member? And the overall, overwhelmingly amount was that there was a lack of awareness of CDSS and the predominant reason, sorry, let me rephrase that. Most people don't know enough about CDSS to be members. Across several of the questions regarding possible barriers to membership, the majority just selected no opinion. We asked questions, what would be the potential barriers? Lifestyle, financial reasons, location. And again, 59% said, I just don't know enough. Ooh, we've gotten to the asks for CDSS. So the very last question of the survey was an open-ended prompt. And then I have to say that we had over half the respondents answer this question. It was incredibly engaging and powerful to read each and every response. And I would love to go through each and every one of them with you tonight, but we would be here for a very, very long time. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sharing the most common themes that the common themes that we had in this open-ended question. So that open-ended prompt, put your thinking caps on. If you could ask CDSS to do something that would benefit you or the folk community in the next 5 years, what would you most like CDSS to do? And one quick thing before we go in to dive into it is that something that we found interesting was that the response themes from this cohort largely match sentiments from the annual CDSS membership survey. So it turns out a lot of these themes aren't just problems that we have or concerns between the 18 and 44-year-olds. It turns out this is an everyone. These are themes for everyone, which I think is pretty cool. All right, the most common themes: recruiting and outreach, organizing resources, training and skills, diversity and inclusion, and programming accessibility. Respondents were focused on supporting their local recurring events. Recruiting and outreach support requested. Respondents wanted guidance on reaching out to and retaining participants, particularly young ones, at their local recurring events. They wanted their communities to feel friendly, safe, and inclusive. One of these quotes is just one of my favorites, is I'd also like to see more effort to get people talking to each other and creating friendships across generational divides. And I will point out the next few slides, we're going to be pointing out those common themes, and then we took some quotes that we thought that best represented the overarching themes that people were having. Connecting organizers, building safe dances, and running events were common asks. So some of the sub-themes from this were connect leaders across communities, code of conduct and safety resources, and event toolkits. Really strong resources and workshops for dealing with dancers who make others feel unwelcome and uncomfortable, especially on grounds of race, sexuality, gender identity, and gender expression. And I want to point out the safety resources. That only was the feelings of feeling welcome, but also physical safety. That was something else that came up. Respondents hoped for accessible training to develop skills and sustain their communities. Skill building across leadership roles. Half of the respondents said that they would like to learn or grow skills in folk leadership roles. Something that was really interesting is that sound engineering was the second most requested skill respondents hoped to develop. A particularly nice quote is, we don't really have the next generation of talent. We're starting to focus more on that locally, but it's a big problem we can't shift alone. Diversity, equity, and inclusion mattered. Increased diversity, DEI education and resources, gender inclusivity, especially for dance calling. Respondents wanted more diversity in participants and leaders, including age, gender, race, ethnicity, and economic background. Respondents believed CDSS could play a key role in supporting these. Respondents wanted gender inclusive spaces and the resources to develop them, viewing gender neutral terminology as a key way to achieve this. Perhaps a training or workshop to help folks safely explore why change in language might not just be kind to a few individuals, but also promoting a safe and inclusive culture. Increase access to programming beyond New England and folk community hubs requested. More online programming and overcome the New England centrism. Remote events were mentioned as a way to increase access to training, increase CDSS visibility, and connect individuals and smaller organizations with limited access to camps and larger communities. And some respondents perceived CDSS as a New England-centered organization that disproportionately represented those local interests. There's nothing available in my area. That's a great quote. All right, key takeaways and opportunities. Woohoo! And actually, I'm going to take this moment to pass it back to Katy German, who's going to take us about review the key survey insights and the opportunities that CDSS can potentially provide.
So yeah, as we were going through all of this data and these responses, we kept asking ourselves, okay, what can we do now? What can we begin working on now to do down the road? How do we make some programmatic and operational choices based on this? So we first identified the key insights and then focused on what we thought the immediate opportunities for us were. So many respondents overall were unaware that CDSS, what it stands for, what it is, and what it offers. So we really want to boost awareness of the existing resources that we have. And we've been trying to do that as best we can, but we really feel like the key to that is working with our affiliates and local groups more, and helping increase their awareness, and then them helping their community understand what's available, because we have resources and support for individuals and for groups. So we put a lot of work into things that already exist. We want to get the word out for that. A number of requests for resources that CDSS is also currently developing. So that's another thing to focus on, really move forward the projects that would be responses to this survey. And again, helping to connect our local groups and affiliates, getting them to understand what's available so that they can then use them and put them to use in their communities. Half of the respondents were engaged as leaders in their communities, or self-identified as leaders, specifically or especially with contra dance. So, that got us thinking, we definitely want to continue any resources and programming that we have to support leadership training and development. And we probably should focus a little bit on the contra community, because we are getting a strong voice from them right now. It doesn't mean to the detriment of other traditions. I just want to say, it just means we want to carve out a little bit of time to give them some focus to that. And we want to explore possible reasons for lower participation rates for the other activities. So this survey, this response group didn't reported contra as the most popular activity. Does that represent what is really happening across the board, or do we need to dig deeper and see how we can reach the people in this cohort who are doing the other activities? A common theme was a desire to support and grow respondents' local communities, especially by recruiting and retaining more participation and younger participation. So what we can do is we can continue and expand our work to facilitate organizers and in these conversations among organizers, learning from each other, connecting across communities, seeing what others have tried. We have done web chats for organizers. We want to grow that and do more of that over the next couple of years. And we especially want to think about how we can use our platform and our position to foster intergenerational collaboration and relationships in communities. It's something we have valued as an organization in our internal operations, and it's something we could do more of broadly. A key value for these respondents, including increasing BIPOC participation and leadership. Sorry, I can't read, it's too small. There we go. Leadership, gender inclusivity, and promoting safe dancing. So that's equity work in general. We look at cultural equity a lot, but anything that would fall under the umbrella of equity, it's not something you can paste a Band-Aid on and then be done with it. It's ongoing work commitment to evaluation, commitment to really listening and making changes that need to happen. So we want to curate, create, and promote awareness of the DEI resources that we have and that are in development. One thing that we had a lot of help on, and some of you here helped with it, is we're collecting codes of conduct. So we can make a quick access resource. People who want to create codes of conduct for their community can just find that there. Oh, and we're moving on. So I got it, Audrey. So when we are doing this and we map this out, we're like, hey, look, actually, it turns out we're kind of on the right track already. Thank goodness. Because here are our 4 focus areas outlined in our current strategic plan that just went into play this year. And the 4 focus areas for the next 5 years are help affiliates adapt in a changing world, reevaluate and update the CDSS membership model, achieve financial sustainability, and embed cultural equity in CDSS programs and operations. So we color coded them and put, cool little shapes there. So if you go back and look at which of the key takeaways and the work that we think we could focus on most quickly, you see there's an alignment with what our strategic plan already tells us to do. So that's always great to see that. And I think it means too that we can continue like deeper, longer term work in this area. It's not tagging on a lot of things that are outside of our stated focus areas. Great. Anything you want to add, Audrey?
I mean, I have to say that it was like reassuring that looking at the key asks from these respondents was like, oh, wait, this is something, these are our CDSS's goals. And so again, it was reassuring to saying, okay, we don't have to take, a sharp left turn now in our, our big decision making in the next 5 years. And in fact, we are on the right path. And so I think it's reaffirming that yes, what we want to do is what we should, what folks want of this age cohort is what we're focusing on. And so it was kind of reassuring that there weren't any big surprises.
Great. All right, back to you, right?
Yeah. So thank you again, everyone. And just a reminder that this town hall is being recorded, and we just threw a lot of information at you. So I highly recommend, we'll be posting the slides and the recording of this meeting in a few weeks on our website. And so I would encourage you to take a look, download the PDFs, take a look at it and share it with your community. And this is what this information is for. And I think the other thing is that this is very much the beginning of an ongoing conversation. I don't want to say, okay, here's the data, this is what we're going to do, the end. This is really, it feels like the beginning of this conversation. And so there's so much more to continue. And I think that we are going to be doing another web chat focused on this in the coming year. And we're right now kind of thinking about ways that we can further act these common themes and how we can connect more with not just our members, but the entire folk community. So I'm pretty excited. I don't know if you can tell, but this has been great. It's been this has been a big project that we've been working on, and it feels really nice to be able to share all of this information with you. Well, yeah, with that being said, I think we have time for questions and answers.
Woohoo. All right. So we did ask people to submit questions ahead of time to help inform what we presented today. But there are some that I want to pull out from there. So we're going to start there. And oh boy, here come the questions. So keep putting them in direct message to me is the best way to get them answered. We probably will not have time to get to all the questions. We'll do our best. But hey, that just means we should hang out again and keep talking. So, okay. Going to the questions that were submitted ahead of time. One of them is, have we collectively moved beyond gendered calling? Great question. And I'm going to throw our Director of Programs, Joanna, into the front line of this one.
Uh-oh, thanks, Katie. So this is a really interesting question, but first of all, how do we define we? Who is we? And I don't think we can say that we have collectively moved beyond gendered calling, because the US, Canada, we are a collection of diverse communities, and not everybody thinks the same thing. Not everybody prioritizes the same thing. And at CDSS, we are really clear about the fact that each community gets to make the decisions that is best for their community, and they get to decide what that is. And so some communities have transitioned away from gendered calling, and some communities choose not to. Some communities are in between the two, and some communities are not even ready to have that conversation. So we're all in different places there.
Great. Thank you. Next question that was submitted ahead of time. What are plans for offering webinars that can reach a wider audience? So I'll take this one. We definitely recognize that expanding online program offerings would go a long way in improving accessibility of what we, training and education resources. And so we're on board with that, and we want to incorporate that into our plans moving forward even more prominently than it is now. But we are, like all nonprofits, constrained by staffing capacity and, the economic situation that we all find ourselves in. So we've already started making adjustments as an organization to get to a point where we can expand capacity and devote more time to this work. And we are in the process of making some more adjustments this year. So hopefully we will be successful in those efforts and be able to put some more staff resources behind the online programming. We will not, but the thing I want to say is that no amount of online programming is going to ever fully replace in-person practice and mentoring. And that means that's not just calling, but leadership. You have to practice leadership skills, being an organizer, running a local board that runs events. And that's something that CDSS is never going to be able to make happen. It will always take participation, and cooperation with local groups. And so I think, it's a question of how much can CDSS do to provide information and resources, and how can we collaborate and work with local groups and organizers who provide the opportunities for practice and mentoring. All right. What is CDSS doing to provide a pathway for young people to enter leadership roles? Great question. So internally, I feel like we've been working on that as an organization. Over the last 6 years, we've mapped out some really planful transitions as our revered leaders have been retiring, and we've been bringing new people on. And we did that in a staggered way and in a planful way to capture really important institutional knowledge. And I think this question is not about CDSS, but I'm bringing this up because that's a really good approach, to be planful and thinking long term about a handoff, as opposed to just, tossing a hot potato. And I think that's really something that we could talk about more and facilitate more learning around with organizers. We have, as an organization, been hiring program directors for our camps and camp operation managers in younger age groups. And they've been bringing on more program staff in younger age groups. And that's been great. And that's not something that it's something that's naturally happening. So it's a matter of encouraging it and making room for it. And we do provide some training opportunities and various financial assistance for people to attend our programs. But again, that's about CDSS. Externally, in the local organizations, again, this is going to take cooperation and working with local communities. We can only offer training, but we can't force it to happen. And so if you are in a community and you are looking, or your organizers are looking at your situation and thinking, man, we need to bring in more leadership, we need to train more callers. We love when people call us and we have an opportunity to work with them, talk through some approaches, some strategies. Is there grant funding available? Who could we connect them with? That's something that CDSS could do more of, if, we'll step up if local communities engage with us too. Okay, next question. About 30% of these under 50 respondents participate in community singing. Is CDSS offering enough singing opportunities? Joanna, you want to take that one?
I mean, are there ever enough singing opportunities?
No,
Probably
never.
not. I mean, never. So each one of our camp programs always has a singing component to it. And those are our chief programs at the moment. We grapple with this topic of song a lot, and it's in the name of our organization. And while we foster opportunities to sing, we support organizations that really focus on song. Not all song organizations see CDSS as their mothership, as it were. So we're thinking about that as we make connections with other groups. CDSS might not always be the right group to really offer these kinds of programs. So we really want to work with you. If you are part of an organization that focuses on song and you have some ideas about ways we could co-sponsor programs, we want to hear from you. And we know, and we've thought about this as part of our strategic planning process, that song is a very important component of our programs and will continue to be. But we don't feel like we are the ultimate stewards of singing and song organizations. So we're in sort of this funny place with it, but we want to be honest with ourselves. And we'd love to hear from more of you who have thoughts about that, comments, or again, who would like to collaborate with us on song programs.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, so another reason that I would love to build more connections with local song communities is we have this year been putting a lot of time and effort into our community calendar, which really needs a better name because it is a calendar / map of where to find dance events. But what's unique about this is it includes ongoing series as well as events. So I've been reaching out to organizers kind of in chunks, and we're trying to get that as populated as possible. It's on our website. Click on community calendar at the top. You can see it lists. You can filter by date, by region, by state. It's great. You can click map, and then it maps what your findings are. Is it perfect? No, because we are an arts nonprofit, not a high-end tech organization. But it is really darn functional, and it's going to be better and better the more people put their opportunities to dance and sing on there. You can filter by dance type and song. So if you haven't checked it out, check it out. It is free. It will remain free and open to anybody who's posting events that are, again, the scope of what we steward and support. And so that's really going to be a tool that we can continue to use and promote to help people find song and dance wherever they go. And I've actually already used it on some of my travels, which is super exciting to put it into use. So again, if you know of community sings or song groups that are open to people walking in, please let them know that this is a free resource that we are going to continue to promote in across our whole audience and service area. Okay, so next question. What were the noticeable variations between regions in our responses? Audrey or Lindsey, do you want to speak to that one?
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
So we did not actually have the statistical power to slice by region in a way that we felt would represent samples that were kind of split between urban and non-urban areas. So we did a lot of thinking when we were actually designing the survey of, do we want to look for this? And what we decided was not in this particular survey. And just not knowing what numbers we would get, we didn't feel that that was within kind of the key goals of what we were trying to achieve. I know there's been definitely a lot of interest in understanding that. So maybe that's a future initiative or one that you can start within your own communities and CDSS can help support.
Yeah, that would have been really great to be able to glean some insights regionally, but it really, the really didn't work out. It would not be wise to try to do that with the way that the respondents are distributed. Okay, so next question. CDSS, can you talk about the process of creating survey answers? What are the backgrounds of the folks who were consulted, and was this an open call? Audrey.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. Lindsey and I have been friends for quite some time, and I will not stop talking about CDSS and just kind of what the future is going to look for like this. And Lindsey was like, well, I know how to do these kinds of things. I know how to make surveys. In fact, I do it for a living. And so with Lindsey became our primary consultant and volunteered her time and efforts to doing this and helped draft our initial response sets for the survey. And this was a very long process of going back and forth and creating a 30-minute survey and trying to squeeze it down to a 10-minute feasible survey. And we ran several pilot testing. We had a group of, we collected feedback among a small group of people with as many ranges of demographic as possible. And it was amazing how many things they found that we either missed or whatnot. And so we beta tested this a fair amount and obviously made adjustments of the survey based off of the feedback that we did. And so I can say that I feel confident in the way that we did the survey because we had someone who knew what they were doing and feel very grateful for that. And so that's how we got Lindsey on board with this.
And as both Audrey and Katy mentioned, there were some really tough cuts where there were questions that were interesting and relevant and really timely that really fell just outside of what this initiative was hoping to achieve. And that was, decisions that we had to make in order to ensure that we wouldn't have drop off in response rate.
Great, thank you. Another question. Well, there were some questions that came in that were great questions and great topics for future discussions, but weren't necessarily, we weren't able to answer with this data or related to the survey. And so I'm just going to name some of them just so that if this is you know that we are flagging this as a great future topic. How do we make it more feasible for families and people with less means to be able to participate as members of the community? What are some ideas for attracting and retaining young adults? We've been trying for years with no success. And how do we get younger dancers to become more than beginners? So these are great follow-up conversations that we have noted and that we would love to create programming to discuss more fully. A lot of the other questions that were presented, that were submitted, we tried to cover in the presentation. Definitely one that came in and one that I see has come in tonight is really, why did we have a cutoff at 45? Why didn't we open the survey to people who were 45 and older? And we got a lot of feedback from people in the directly above the age range that say, I have valuable input. Why can't I give it to? Why am I excluded? And we're really sorry to have made anybody feel excluded. This was one of the many hard decisions and lines that we had to draw in order to try to make the survey data as useful and focused as possible. We had easily 3 or 4 times the number of questions that we originally brainstormed as wanting to ask folks. And we thought about making it an everybody survey, but we don't have unlimited capacity to analyze it. So we made a decision to focus on the age ranges that we really saw the most dramatic gap in the data that we already had, in the feedback that we already had. But we hear you all loud and clear. And so we are considering other initiatives or ways to bring in feedback from that age group too. I actually, after doing the survey and getting the feedback and really getting a feel for how the data came in, I don't think we would want to administer this exact same survey without any adjustments. So, I mean, I think this is something that we'll be interested in customizing a bit for that age group. But I just want to apologize to all of the participants, movers and shakers, and really just great humans out there who did not fit in the age range and felt really frustrated that they weren't involved. And we hear you, and we and you can call and talk to us too anytime. Okay, so I'm looking at the time. We could take a few other questions, not all of them. Yes, very intelligent, inquisitive group. So let's see. Hal Schnee, you asked, can you explain more about the number of respondents who identify as queer? Numbers don't seem to add up. Does queer and trans mean not cis? Or did some cisgendered people also identify as queer trans? Lindsey, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I can jump on that. So we had a couple different ways that we asked the demographic questions. And we had two separate questions, one for gender and one that was a catch-all that just had do you identify as queer? So those were actually collected separately. We do have more detailed information about self-reported gender that was not included here. Just again, we were going for that top line. So we, as discussed earlier, that open-ended response, or that not open-ended part, multi-select response was, do you identify as queer and or trans? And you can either check it or not, or leave that question entirely blank. So those were not intended to add up, and we can make sure that when we put out the PDF of that is more clear.
Great. Another question that came in tonight was, are the geographic regions that we've defined equal in population? And I think that question is about the general population, not our responses. So maybe it's also, why did we slice and dice the continent the way that we did?
I can also speak to that. So we asked for geography via an open-ended question. So please insert, please type your city-state in. What we then did was we said, well, how can we look at this data? And we ended up using kind of the two representations that we showed here. One was we just used the US Census regions, and we had so few responses outside the US that we've thought that was our first, did we get kind of a broad distribution across the country? Does this feel like we've reached more than, say, New England? And then the second way that we looked at it was in terms of hubs. And we looked for urban areas or just concentrations of people saying the same thing: Boston, Massachusetts, Seattle, Washington. And we clustered that way as well.
So yeah, we didn't have a perfect best approach to take. This was the approach that we did take. And if you have other ideas for looking at it differently, we could certainly see, we have lots of additional questions we want to ask this data that we haven't had a chance to really dive into, and we're going to keep doing analysis and deeper dives. I do want to move to the next question. So Darlene Hamilton, you asked, can you describe what supporting leadership training opportunities might look like? So supporting leadership training opportunities, that's, again, I think it's a nod to our desire to collaborate on a local and regional level to help create leadership training opportunities in a specific region or for a specific target audience that has been identified by affiliates or a community. So that could look like someone saying, hey, CDSS, we need this. I have no idea where to start. Can you connect me with someone who's done this, or can you give me some advice on where to start? That's a way to, those conversations are a way to support it. It can also mean, this is a project we want to do. We've got it all shaped. We just need funding. And so that's what we're reaching out for. I can't promise unlimited funding and grants. We have named funds. There are limits we can give out per year, but those are examples, and the common element is really working with the community to support wherever they are in creating those, opportunities. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Oh, someone asked if the leftover questions can be answered via e-blast or email. I think instead we will probably put a Q&A document together. So questions that we didn't have time to get to tonight, we will list and make an attempt to answer eloquently and just blow people's minds by how, perfect the answers are. I'm kidding. I'm getting punchy. It's very late on the East Coast. So we'll post that with the recording of tonight's town hall and the slides. I did see that there was also a request for access to the data, the raw data. That's something that it has been requested. We are considering. There's a fair bit of stuff that would need to be, oh no, Audrey is gesturing emphatically. Audrey, what do you want to say?
This survey was definitely done under anonymity. And so, for the interest of, again, keeping the anonymity of these folks, we cannot give out the data. And so we are doing our best to collate the most important information, and that we will post with these slides.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that conversation. I remember that now. And I think we're at the end of our time tonight, and we do need to go ahead and wrap up. So I can't remember is that me? Am I wrapping this up? That's me, right?
If you want it to be.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, one thing I want to say is a huge nod of gratitude and appreciation to both Audrey and Lindsey Dono, who really made this project happen and are continuing the conversation. They have been amazing, and they've been inspiring to the rest of us at CDSS. And just by virtue of doing this work, we are already making better connections with people that we hadn't connected with as much before. So great job to those two. Again, thank you so much to everybody who took the time to help us beta test it, to answer, to give responses, and continue engagement and asking questions that keep our brains fresh and turning. Audrey, oh, the other thing I need to say, this program and many of our online programs are free and open to anybody, and that's possible because of support that we receive from membership and donations. So thank you, members. Thank you, donors. If you are interested in helping us keep these going and expanding this work, please consider making a donation to CDSS on our homepage. You can just cdss.org, make a donation, top right corner. It's pretty clear. I don't remember the exact words, but thank you to all of you who have been supporting this work and making it possible. Audrey, anything else you want to add?
Nope. Thank you again to the respondents who took the time to take this survey, and everyone who took the time out of their evening to come and listen. And with all of these participants, it's clear that this information is important and that we all care about the future. And so I just feel really, really appreciative of all of you. So thank you so much.
All right. Everybody have a lovely rest of your evening.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.